Today is Wednesday, July 24th, and we started the day with the McClellan oscillator pretty much at the neutral line, just below the neutral line. And today's market showed that the advancers led the decliners by about 70 to 30%. So we're going to see the McClellan oscillator push up above the neutral line into the positive zone, heading towards, but far from, overbought, correct. The Dow took a steep drop this morning, and that was all related to Caterpillar and Boeing, and continued not to recover. The NASDAQ was shooting straight up as the tech stocks got over their fear of government regulation, despite Facebook getting a $5 billion fine. But there's questions about Google now surrounding the White House. The S&P 500 had pretty good volume today and finished strongly, plus 15, up 0.5%. And that brings us to looking at the trend line, and look where we stopped, right at the trend line. Trend line was 3016. We finished at 3020, so that's pretty close. Trend lines are subjective things. It could be, the trend line could be anywhere, plus or minus 5 points there. So we would need to see if tomorrow's strength is strong enough to break the trend line, which has been resistance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, 6 days since it started on January the 27th. Apple did move. Did it move into the gap? Yes, it did. It moved slightly into the gap today, but on pathetically low volume. So don't get too excited about that. Caterpillar down 621, as we said. So look where it stopped, right at the top of the cloud. And the Chiku span at one time came down to this level here today, which would be where? Bouncing exactly off the 50-day exponential moving average. So that's where the Chiku span had its maximum drop to coincide with this value right here. So let's line that up with today's Chiku span, and you can see that we came down and we touched the 50. So resistance on the cloud, but wild swings with price stopping exactly in the middle between its opening and closing, exactly in the middle between its low of the day and its high of the day. And at its high of the day, it was over the 50 and the 200. So that bodes well for Caterpillar. And today was a big candle day with lots of volume. This shows positive volume because we did actually finish above the open, although it was negative from yesterday, of course. So that begs the question, what did we do with our Caterpillar short calls? Well, I took my 145 calls and rolled them into next week. I got out of them for 25 cents, and I didn't buy another short call because I expect Caterpillar to recover a little bit off of this. I think the resistance at the cloud is temporary, and that the top of this candle tomorrow will be support. So I'm calling for the Chiku span to bounce off of the top of this candle, and that's the way I'm playing it, by having no short calls on half my Caterpillar positions. The other half position is short 135 calls. It looks like those are down to 23 cents, so I'm certainly going to take them off tomorrow. And if there's any positive movement in the stock, I'm going to keep them off and look for another time to sell short calls, because I think the recovery for Caterpillar to get back to 136.60, which would be the golden ratio, could be a while coming. Gold miners is bound here, range bound, not above this high here. So let's set an alert right at that value there. So once we pass that, we'll get an alert, and that'll be an opportunity to step back into GDX. Whirlpool had a big day today. Remember, yesterday it had its earnings, and it had this huge outside candle day that engulfed everything all the way back to June 17th. So let's bring this in a little bit, and right here. So everything June 17th onward was engulfed by yesterday's candle, and today we played right inside the candle, finishing below yesterday's open, but volume was above the 20-day moving average, so that's another positive sign. Let's bring in the Ichimoku, and the daily doesn't tell us anything much. The weekly shows us stopping right here on the cloud. So let's move this candle over here, and let's take a look tomorrow, and let's see if we can break into the cloud with the Chiku span. Let's see, and that was WHR. Let's go to WDC. WHR, I still have what I rolled my 145 calls. We have 97 cents left in them. I rolled them to next week's for $2. So I continue to collect premium on that first batch of 400 shares of Whirlpool, and I haven't added since. But I'll be looking to add it once we break into the weekly cloud here. This trend line looks to be pretty decent support. Volume today was a little bit above the the 20-day moving average for volume. WDC had a high right here today, which was just under the 200 Chiku span and the 200-day moving average. So that 200 is proving resistance for WDC, but it's still a good stock. I held on to it so that I could get the dividend. I am out of WDC now, but it's looking like it's time to get back in, as now we've broken over the 78.2. And usually history says when we break over the 78.2, we go back to 100%, which I drew here. And I discussed why I picked that point before, because it just fits where the 38 and the 68 had some resistance. If we take this big one and we draw a retracement from this big one down to this same point, we can see that there's some alignment. These two fibs coincide on both of these retracements. These two are pretty close together, so the 100 and the 38.2 look like that could be a magnet. So I'm just going to change this one to green so that we know the big one is green and the little one is a different color. Let's change, oops, moved it. So let's just change that one to red. So the 38.2 is 62.23, the 100% is 61. We're over the 78.2%, 78.6% on this fib. I'm going to ignore that fib. I'm going to ignore that one as well. And we're heading up towards this area, and WDC should be a stock that we buy tomorrow with some strength. They have earnings tomorrow. So do they have earnings tomorrow? I think they have earnings right now. I think they have earnings after the bell today. So let's take a look at the 1 minute, and let's look at extended data. And we don't have a lot of motion. So if they've reported earnings, it hasn't been greatly affected. Tomorrow's still a day to add. So let's come back and look at that, verify that there was earnings today. And if they did, then it's definitely a time to buy.